And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Roster Report here on Sundays on LIV Radio. We call our Sunday program the Mastermind, and we get together with our colleagues and we look at what's happening in the world. We look at culture, consciousness, historical perspective. We deal with entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, Pan-African affairs, as well as what is hot in the news. Today's date is Sunday, the 14th day of September 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6266 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we have realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginblack.com. And let's get right into the program today. I hope you find this to be compelling, fascinating, and we're going to do the best we can to keep you entertained as well as informed to the very best of our abilities. Let me first of all greet in the package today the Mastermind Group. Baba Junius, we have you up and in the house. Welcome, Aquaba. How you doing today?
Madasi, I'm well. Thank you for the invitation.
Also, we do have in the house Dwara, the invisible partner, Aquaba. How are you doing today, Brother Dwara?
Doing blacknificent. Great to be with you, Babas. Thank you for the invitation.
I have Dwara in the house.
Can I be heard?
Great to have you with us as well. Yeah, you are sounding great.
Shay?
Are you there? Okay.
Yes,
all right. The big news of the week, domestic assassination. It's been a while, but looking at it in detail, we could see this one coming. Anybody want to open up the conversation with any comments about the political assassination of Charlie Kirk, the conservative right-wing race baiting commentary?
Well, last week we asked the question, is a civil war coming? And right on time, this young man is murdered, and his followers and the right are calling for a civil war. It remains to be seen what type of retaliation, if any, will take place, but it's coming and it's going to be in the news and keep people distracted and discombobulated for the next couple of days. And like I said, it's a distraction from a lot of the things that are coming out. The Epstein situation, the situation with Israel just going crazy, the economy, and so many other factors. So just keep your eyes and ears open on this one.
Dwara, did you want to comment on the assassination of Charlie Kirk?
I think, ironically,
I think I have a network connection problems over here. Okay, I'm back again. We're up again, Dwara.
Sure. I think, very interestingly, you had mentioned race baiting, and I know a lot of the European race baiters, so to speak, talk a lot about black on black crime, which we do know is a significant issue and problem within our specific community. However, it's very ironic that there is a lot of political violence, European male on European male. And I just find that interesting how that almost always conveniently gets overlooked.
Yeah. And early on in looking at the comments that Charlie Kirk has been attributed to, and I will be honest with you all, before looking at his murder in detail, I knew who Charlie Kirk was, but I had largely kind of overlooked him and or ignored him. I knew he was race baiting. That's a given. And I knew he had this thing he did. He went to college campuses and held these political debates. And he said, prove me wrong to everyone. And as a public debater, I kind of admired the guy, even though I was not aware of his particular points. I wouldn't watch a video of him more than 20 seconds and I'd go off. So in the aftermath of this assassination, I did take a much deeper look into him, and the guy was atrocious. He was a race baiter. He said nasty things and untrue. He perpetuated untruths about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. He said nasty things about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and it goes on and on and on and on. A whole litany of these anti-African and anti-Palestinian statements that you and I would find appalling.
Not only that, he was what they now call an influencer. He was very deep into the Trump camp. He was a supporter of Donald Trump early on and when he first ran. And he's a proponent of the so-called conservative points of view. He railed against the so-called culture wars. And he had a large following among young people. That's why they're holding him up. He was big in the college circuit. He was attacking professors that he called too liberal or who were spouting Marxist doctrine. So he caught the eye of the right. Now, the one thing, because I did some research on him, so the one thing that he didn't do was he stepped away from the neo-fascist element and he focused on the religious nationalism. And so he's held up as this great researcher. He's held up as this great communicator. He's held up as this great organizer because he's reaching out to younger people. One of his programs, believe it or not, was called Blexit, Blexit, and it was designed for African Americans and people of color to brainwash them into conservative thinking and to get them away from being conscious of their history. Right? Just like he, according to him and what they were talking about, to move them away from quote unquote victimhood. You know, the whole, I guess, the prosperity, America, you know, the Horatio Alger kind of myth kind of stuff. And so that's why he's so well liked and well thought of in the right, in the so-called conservative element. And because he was bringing up and being very influential in a younger generation of so-called conservatives.
Mm-hmm. Duare, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think our people are at a very interesting crossroads in that clearly Charlie Kirk was definitely a race baiter. I agree with you. And he spouted what I personally would consider racist statements. Yet on the other hand, in this multipolar world, I think it's interesting that there are also some things that I agree with him on. And so I think the media has a tendency to want to create this very clearly defined schism And yet, I think human beings and I think politics and cultural politics are a lot more complex than we oftentimes give them credit for. So, our people, I feel, stand at a crossroads in that our people are a people of morality. Our people are a
Mm.
people of familyhood. And that has been eroded with the destruction of the Black or the African family. And at the same time, I'm not going to give a carte blanche pass to someone like Charlie Kirk, who did advocate for morality and family, just because of some of the statements that he said. He was debating with this one very articulate, very eloquent, very calm and patient African American young brother, and he basically, in his vitriolic emotionalism, said that this young brother should be kissing the ground that he is on in gratitude that his descendants were taken from Africa and brought to America. That is obviously a statement that I cannot get behind. So my whole point is that I think we have to be careful not to get so caught up in either one of these political sides. And as Brother Baba Mumbera so articulately and so poetically states, it's important for us to be casual observers of this current political circus. And so I just wanted to interject that.
I do completely agree. All of your points very, very well made. It's easy to, on the surface, to judge Charlie Kirk for the foulness that he brought to the whole idea of political debate in this country, while at the same time we can appreciate his strategies and his tactics. His goal was ultimately to create a movement that would last for generations. And he wanted this conservative youth movement to reshape America in the latter parts, middle and latter parts of the 21st century. He wanted to create an institution somewhat like Harvard or Rand Group, Rand Corporation and these other think tanks, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what his particular group, which I can't remember the name of it right now, but it'll come to me in just a second.
This group was Turning Point USA. He
Turning
had
Point USA.
several other subsidiaries and offshoots of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do not agree with their fundamental strategies of Turning Point USA. I'm not a fan of any MAGA affiliated organization or group that's out here. Yet, like you say, Brother Duara, the points that he's making about the black man being in that family, in the household, etc., it's hard to disagree with that. In fact, it was such a good, strong point of returning the black man to the black family and, stopping with the criminal activities and everything. It's too bad we couldn't send him back to the Moynihan report in the early 1960s, mid 1960s, that began this process of disassembly of the intact black nuclear family.
Ashe. Yeah, absolutely. There were definitely several points that a qualified enough debater among our people would cut him down in terms of being able to expose the very real conspiracy to destroy not only the black family but the family in general at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So no one's perfect, but I do want to draw a very clear line that I believe people should be able to believe and really kind of say whatever they want without being assassinated, because the other side of this is what's being called excuse me, I'm just trying to look this up. There's an article from Zero Hedge. America has a Transtifa problem. There is a deeper element here amongst people who identify as transgender, and this almost detachment from reality that is being radicalized in a violent way. And I think this trend is something that I've been studying the last couple of days more in depth, and it's very interesting and somewhat concerning.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the trans identity, did anyone else see, and I've yet to really confirm it, that the man who supposedly has confessed to this killing, if not to the police and to other family members, and they are going to be witnesses against him, was himself living with a transgender person? Did anyone else see that story?
Yeah, they're calling him. Some articles call him his roommate. That this person, his roommate. Others say he was his partner. So it's hard to discern what is the case, what exactly their relationship is.
I believe it's now been confirmed. I believe it's now been confirmed that is his transgender lover.
Okay. And the man accused of the killing, of course, Tyler Robinson, was from a very distinctively Republican MAGA Mormon family. That's an interesting set of connections there as well. That the family raised a child that would be the exact opposite in ideologically, politically, as the parents.
Well,
but see, he was in school. He was down in Utah. I think his father was some kind of law enforcement. They don't say which branch or what department.
No, I'm sorry. He was a cabinet installation person.
Who, his father?
His father. His father was not law enforcement.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
But the interesting thing is, the narrative is that his father encouraged him to turn himself in, and then they got somebody else to sort of mediate and encourage him to turn himself in.
Yeah. Excuse me. I think the other thing that needs to be taken into account is the fact that with this increased use of social media, and it's not that people weren't using social media before the COVID-19 pandemic, but ever since the pandemic, there has been this goal, this push to get as many people locked into this digital slave ship, for lack of a better term, called the internet. And there is a lot of political radicalization that goes on some of these back channels, some of these more obscure social media platforms. Specifically mentioned in this case was Discord, and these Discord gaming servers in which people are able to have unobstructed communications in private while playing these video games. And there's an interesting connection to Luigi Mangione, the alleged killer of Brian Thompson of United Healthcare, in that both of them played a game online called Killer, supposedly. And so we have to wonder, at what point is social media at its core a mechanism for an MK Ultra / Project Monarch / Tavistock brainwashing mechanism that is literally detaching some of these young men from reality and implanting these very violent ideologies within them. There's a group called the Zizians, Zizians. If you look up the Zizians, who are being compared to the Charles Manson family. And coming out of the state of California, there is a connection here that we must really pay very close attention to, where it has been theorized by researchers such as David McGowan that this whole serial killer movement within the 60s and 70s and 80s, and then also the satanic panic of the 80s and the 90s, and now this lone white male transgender mass shooter or assassin type of figure. I do believe that there is an interesting connection there. And there's a book called Programmed to Kill by David McGowan. And I urge all of our listeners to check that book out. And he has another book as well called Weird Scenes from Laurel Canyon. And he's connecting the CIA's direct involvement in the whole MK Ultra, LSD, hippie culture that really kind of spins out of control in the 60s into the 70s. But I'm making this connection because I think it's very interesting. There's a lot of similarities between the radicalization of many of these young white men.
And don't forget Jim Jones and his group had CIA connections. He had CIA handlers.
Interesting, deep. Thank you, Baba. Right there.
And it reminds me of another author. We interviewed him one time on LIB Radio, Alex Constantine, who wrote 2 books. I can't remember the name of the book that he would not speak about the book on LIB Radio, but another one. He talked a lot about the CIA's mind control programs, MK Ultra, and he also wrote extensively about O.J. Simpson and the connection to Miami-based cocaine smuggling. And so what you just mentioned would definitely, there is extensive documentation about that people could examine. But let me just take a moment and say greetings to everyone who's checking in and with us on the Rumble page. Kashiba, Queen Mother Kashiba is in the house. She says, Hotep family. Ed L. Mack is in the house. Ashe. For Africa One, Hotep Mastermind Panel and Global LB family. And she asked a question. I'll bring up the question here in just a little bit. And Nguvu checking in says, Sawubona. Greetings to you, Brother Nguvu. This is off the topic, but For Africa One asks, has the panel looked at AfriNet and AfriGold, the impact on big tech companies and global African communities? Just looking at them briefly, I don't know if I'm prepared. No, I really had not been looking at them, but they are in the background. Africa, I couldn't find much on AfriNet, but AfriGold is all about attempting to secure Africa's gold resources for development, for sovereign and sustainable development.
I did see on Zero Hedge that there was an article saying that Ghana is the world's #1 producer of gold. Mali is the second world's leading producer in gold, and South Africa is third. So yeah, I don't know. That's my contribution to that question.
All right. The Zizians.
Could I go back to something that Dewar mentioned? He talked about these trends, and he couched it within the rubric of social media. And we've said over the years, particularly back during the Falcon Forum days, how this medium was, in fact, impacting people and actually literally rewiring their brain. So I typed in how social media rewires the human brain. And this is what came up in Brave. No, it wasn't Brave. Another searching. Social media rewires the brain by leveraging the dopamine reward system, creating a dependency similar to addictive substances, and hindering focus by promoting constant multitasking. These constant rewards and stimuli lead to a heightened sensitivity in the brain regions like the amygdala, increased impulsivity,
Amygdala.
amygdala, increased impulsivity, and reduced ability to regulate attention and emotions. So
Mm-hmm.
these are proven situations, proven uh, connections and relationships, and even could be proven causality of a lot of the mental illness that we're seeing in this country, in addition to all the other things that are going on with the poisoning of the food, the ecocide, the, the content itself of the media that now is designed to further divide and create all kinds of hostility and animus amongst the people, divide and rule.
You bring up a very great point, Baba Junius, and it reminds me also of video games and news media. So video games is another form of brainwashing, as we know, in that sometimes these young people are playing video games for 8-9 hours straight, and that is a form of almost self brainwashing. And when you're only playing video games in which you're murdering people, or committing heinous crimes in these video games. I'm not a video game person, but Grand Theft Auto is one example of a very popular game that came to light in the early 2000s, or that a lot of people played. And the whole game was basically you being a criminal and going around and doing criminal activity. That type of stuff has a direct effect on people's minds, so much so that the military trains people using virtual reality, using video gameplay. I remember locally there was a video game van uh, that was brought to an event. It was like a mobile video game arcade that was brought courtesy of the United States Army to some sort of a carnival or fair. And young people could not only sign up for the military at this van, but they could play an unlimited number of first-person shooter video games. And we wonder why this nation is so rife and ripe with violence, while other young people are outside in nature in different countries around the world, or they're in a community group, or they're doing these very communal things and listening to their elders. I have contended for a long time that the US and Western culture is one of the only cultures in the world where children are encouraged to be the opposite of their parents. Baba Kiti, you mentioned earlier that a conservative, Republican, Mormon household. How does that churn out a transgender, loving, queer, uh, leftist, Antifa supporting liberal? How does that happen? And my contention still is that this is one of the only cultures in which children are taught to abandon their parents' ways and their grandparents' ways, and to rebel. No other no other culture, certainly ones that are earth-based and considered indigenous, quote unquote, none of those children are taught to rebel. They are taught to embrace their ancestors, not to rebel against them. And then lastly, you have the news media, which is setting up this backlash towards anyone and everyone that does not embrace LGBT, transgender, or other types of very extreme leftist ideology.
The other thing
Yeah.
to dovetail on what you said in terms of the so-called generation divide, this culture promotes modernity and progress. That's the equivalent to social change. So because you have this rapid, now, particularly in this time period, this rapid disruptive technology, it feeds right into the whole notion of progress. Progress equals change. And then when you have external forces, like whether it's 9/11, COVID, or some other force that the powers that shouldn't be use to socially engineer what they want, the problem, reaction solution type of programming to bring society to a point where they want it to be. And we're seeing that being played out with a lot of this stuff right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we look at all of this manipulation going on, social media, the video games, I agree with you, Dwara. The video games are deeply, deeply weaving themselves into people's subconscious minds. And eventually, you put enough of this killing madness in a subconscious mind, the subconscious minds of hundreds of thousands of millions of young people in your country, it's going to manifest. It's going to come back out. What is the end purpose of all of this manipulation? Um, yeah, let's just leave the question at that. What is the end purpose?
One purpose is it desensitizes people, number one, to violence, so that you become, that's the norm. You think that's, particularly in our communities where there is so much violence. And so you're desensitized to it. Then it prepares you for something that's much, much more sinister, which is the despiritization, where the sacredness of life is undermined because life doesn't have any meaning, because you can see people and you can participate in these games just killing people.
I would say there's a term called anarcho-tyranny, which is basically kind of like the European way of saying Sept, really, just complete chaos and confusion. And so I would say really that whether this is coming from the World Economic Forum, whether this is coming from George Soros, whether this is coming from the Rothschilds, certainly there are deep state elements that seem to be promoting absolute and extreme chaos and confusion. And so I would say that is one of the end goals, to not only drive people insane, but to call an apple an orange and an orange an apple. And if you mislabel those fruits, so to speak, then you ultimately get arrested for not giving in to the psychosis of as you always say, Baba Kitty, the inmates have taken over the asylum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're reminded of this. I think it's on the dollar bill. It's Ab KO, New Order, something like that, out of chaos.
Ab ortem chaos, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, out of chaos, we will create a new order. The secret societies that put that stamp on the back of the dollar bill. So, is this ultimately to be summed up or characterized as another discrete operation by the secret societies that purport to want to run the world?
Well, Dwara talked about Sept. Sept was Asar's brother, Sept, attempting to overthrow the righteous order. And Sept is the opposite of Ma'at. So obviously, if Ma'at is divine order, then Isfet is criminal chaos. If Ma'at is truth, then Isfet is deception. If Ma'at is harmony, then Isfet is discord. If Ma'at is righteousness, then Isfet is wickedness. And on and on and on. So that's what we're seeing.
Let's just take transgender as a quick example. Okay. So we live in a culture that says now that now anyways, that blackface is wrong, that blackface is cultural appropriation. But on the flip side, we're taught that transgender is completely normal and is not gender appropriation. I contend that that transgenderism is merely gender blackface.
Wow, that's an interesting point of view. Um, yeah, that's an interesting point of view. I had not really thought about it that way. What brought you to that way of thinking, new way of thinking?
Well, I really, again, going back to cultural appropriation,
Right.
dressing up as a Mexican, as a sleepy Mexican for Halloween, or dressing up as, they have these like stereotypical Chinese Asian glasses with very slanted eyes, or I've seen pictures of people dressing up for Halloween as like Snoop Dogg or Flavor Flav from Public Enemy, and so it dawned on me that cultural appropriation is obviously racist. Trying to pretend wear a costume, almost like cosplay, wearing this costume to pretend that you are something else. Why is that demonized as being racist, as it should, but on the other hand, transgender is not seen as a form of gender appropriation? Because I contend that just because you put lipstick on and grow your hair long and wear dangly earrings does not make you a woman. And as a matter of fact, it is an offense to a woman. It is disrespectful to pretend that just because you're wearing women's clothing that you are a woman. That is a great disrespect to women, and that's how I came to that conclusion.
Yeah, but this culture grows out of a mindset or ethos that is anti-feminine.
True.
I mean, not anti-feminism, anti-feminine.
Right.
In terms of how they denigrated the feminine element, that principle, the divine mother. That does not exist. That's not exalted. Once the Indo-Asians came into Europe, they wiped out the Mother Earth-based religions, quote unquote religions, that even the Europeans had prior to the invasions of the Indo-Europeans that came in. So those Europeans who were prior to that were mimicking what they saw in Africa, that the whole consciousness of the balance and harmony, but that got totally wiped out once the invaders came.
And
Dorian Greeks and all of those people who were part of that, those waves of Eurasians that came into the western part of Asia that they call Europe, as well as they just bum rushed the rest of the world, the southern civilizations of the world.
For me, going back to your question, Baba Kiti, is what is kind of the end game? What does all this mean? Well, I guess in order to have a great reset, you do have to have maximum chaos. And for us, and I think, I don't want to speak for all three of us, but I think we can all agree that at the end of the day, it seems to go back to not only depopulation or population control, which transgender is a major part of. but it really goes a step further, and I give ancestor Baba Kamal Kambon full credit for this. It's not just us killing ourselves. It's not just depopulation. It is them figuring out a way how to make money off of the depopulation as well. And so these transgender medications, these puberty blockers, these hormone treatments, these testosterone and estrogen treatments, and these mutilating surgeries are huge, huge, huge money makers for the medical industrial complex. And so not only is it depopulation, but it is a profound business model for opening up a whole new way to take people's money while depopulating. Abortion is the same thing.
Well, not only that, extrapolated, because you're starting to see now studies and reports coming out about these people, these young people who have had the operations, who've been mutilated. Now they're starting to have mental health issues.
Yes.
And you're going to start to see the costs associated with that as they progress, because remember, it's starting to boom, and so you're going to see a wave of those coming through as they get older. And what are going to be the question then becomes, what are going to be the social and psychological ramifications of that?
You bring up a really great point. They have proven that sexual reassignment surgery, right? Getting a sex change, whatever that means, and as crazy as that sounds, that does not relieve the symptoms of suicide amongst those people. Similarly, using abortion as an example, suicidality increases with women that receive an abortion. That is a statistic fact. And so I agree with you, where these young people are being brainwashed to mutilate their body, because let us not think for one second that abortion also isn't the mutilization of the feminine, the sacred feminine body. It clearly and definitely is. And so really, how do we help our young people not fall into these traps of really self-mutilization? Because at the end of the day, that also has a spiritual dimension too, as we know.
Well,
Yeah.
keep in mind, one of the things that is happening is that parents are starting to wake up, and they're realizing that their children are being propagandized towards that at an early age. Even the priests, they were up in arms about those reading situations in preschool,
Right?
where the queers would come into the schools and read to them, and they'd be dressed in drag or whatever.
Yeah.
Not even trying to be subtle about it. And so again, they're going after the young minds. One person called them the defenseless minds. And once they get a toehold, because they have the technology, they can keep on reinforcing it. They learned a lot about human behavior with the MK Ultra. These the sleepers, Manchurian candidates kind of thing, control that the so-called security services use. They've learned a lot about how to manipulate people.
We have a few comments in the live chat on Rumble. I am monitoring that one very closely. We welcome everybody to the conversation. We do go back, Queen Mother Kashiba. Yes, children are taught to be disrespectful. Ed L. Mack writes, speaking on mind control, there was a stabbing on the light rail in Charlotte, North Carolina, around August 22nd, 2025. This Ukrainian young woman was killed by a black male that attacked her, along with, and there that it ends right there, along with all the school shootings. Do you think this is an attempt to get guns out of the hands of the people? And that's an interesting point also when we go back to the death of Charlie Kirk. Couple of points. Number one, the last question that Charlie Kirk was being asked just before the bullet was fired that hit him in the neck was asking about these mass shootings. What do you think about all the mass shootings in America? And from my understanding, Charlie Kirk's last words were, does that include gang shootings? Pow. So, that was it. That was the end of his life right then and there. Does that include gang shootings? Which the mass shootings do include the gang shootings, and the gang shootings do add a lot to the mass shootings in America. But you can't say it's gang shootings. The other point I want to make is that Charlie Kirk, I'm going to paraphrase him, that he said, in order to sustain the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms in America, we will have to accept that a significant number of people will die as a consequence of that gunfire. What an ironic statement that he would make, because that would become his own fate. Killed by someone like himself, who obviously the man was from a gun supporting family, had been taught to shoot, or Tyler Robinson, I'm saying, had been taught to shoot from an early age. And it was a gun loving family, legally owned the gun that he used to assassinate Charlie Kirk, allegedly so.
But this culture loves violence. They came, they had the militias to subdue the indigenous people and also to maintain order in terms of the enslaved people or the bonded people. So they came here with the goal of pillage and plunder. Next month, they're going to again celebrate Cristobal Colon's so-called discovery of the New World. When you look at his history, his second and third voyages, they were war campaigns. He came with soldiers, he came with attack dogs, he came with cannons and all of the accoutrements of war. And that has gone on, and that set the tone or reinforced the tone because the Portuguese had started already, and that became the ethos of Europe. And what we're seeing happening around the world today is nothing more than a continuation of that mindset. What's mine is mine, and what's yours?
Few more comments appear in the chat. Rory 10X, as he says, I can splain. Psychopathic narcissistic syndrome is the clinical term. It explains damn near all of it. And who says they're stepping away from their roots? If you know about Greek, Roman, and European culture, you see those nuts didn't roll far from the tree. Interesting comments. Anybody want to respond to Rory's comments?
I agree. I think a lot of this is very deeply psychological, and I think that is a consequence of this Uruguayan, Eurasian cultural society. I guess going back to the video games for a second, in a lot of these killers photos, you see a deadness within the eyes, the ashe, the nyama, the nyom, all these different terms for vitalistic energy or life force appears to be completely depleted. And I would go so far as to say is that video games, social media, and this 24-hour news cycle that we talked about earlier is a process of anti-socialization. And so a lot of these killers have not been properly socialized. So they're the opposite of Ubuntu. They
Mm.
psychologically are just nihilistic. And the FBI has actually come out and said that this form of what they're calling nihilistic accelerationism is kind of an emerging threat within U.S. culture.
Hmm.
To wrap up, I'll just say that yes, I think a lot of these young people, through the social media, through the video games, through the screen time, when just think about it. These young people spend more times looking into the camera of their cell phone than into the eyes of other human beings. That is a problem. That is a major problem when you're spending more time with your device than with another human being. You're going to be detached from reality in such a way that the psychopathic, narcissistic, anti-empathy is going to manifest itself. So I completely agree with what that viewer mentioned.
Yeah.
Dewar,
Um,
good.
no, I was going to change the topic.
Okay, but before we change the topic, Dewar mentioned socialization. That's the whole process of cultivation, and cultivation is part of culture. And we have a people who have a culture of war. When you look at their norm, which is nothing more, sociological term, where repeated behavior so that it becomes ingrained into something that people do habitually. Their norms is war. Their norms is xenophobia. Their norm is anti-life, because if you're anti-female, you have to be anti-life.
Mm.
Hmm.
Uh, when you look at the Greeks, they embraced homosexuality, and so did the Romans. And so they try to keep it under wraps and keep it quiet, but these are part of their culture. All of this is part of their culture, their habitual behavior based on emotions and their thought processes. And their thought processes are decidedly different than those of Aboriginal or indigenous people. And they want us to believe that this psychopathy is because they're superior, when in fact, it's clearly a form of maladaptive existence, behavior, culture, values, the whole bit.
Mm.
Hmm. In fact, Robert Junius, you stepped right into the subject of what I was just about to switch it to, and this is culture. Queen Mother Kashiba in the chat writes, the comedy shows such as the Upshaws, the Simpsons, etc., and she further writes, black comedy shows are anti-intellectual and foster ignorance. So that would seem to suggest, and I do agree with our Queen Mother, that there is a culture war going on. Culture wars. This brings me to another topic that I saw today, and I've yet to finally confirm it all, but CBS News was just purchased. Did you catch that story? Anybody catch that story?
Yeah, I saw that. By may I say it?
Um, uh, Person of Jewish faith?
Uh, I actually thought that was connected to the Warner Brothers thing, which is Larry Ellison's son, David Ellison.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but
No, you are right. I heard the story this morning. I wanted to look deeper into it because Larry Ellison, I wanted to confirm that Larry Ellison was a person of a Jewish faith. One story, and I'm pulling this off the top of my head,
Mhm.
said that he could very well likely be an agent of a notorious Israeli spy agency as well. But I don't know the details of that. I could very well be way off on this.
Well, I think Ellison is the head of the parent company that is over top of CBS. Looking
Yeah.
at something now, uh, Paramount Global is undergoing an acquisition by Skydance Media, which was approved by the FCC in July 2025.
Yeah.
Skydance, led by David Ellison, is acquiring Paramount, which
Yeah.
owns CBS and CBS News. And this
And
deal includes significant commitments to change CBS News editorial direction, such as installing an ombudsman and promoting diverse viewpoints.
yes, and then the latest news on that is that David Ellison is now having acquired Paramount. They're now trying to swallow up Warner Brothers Discovery as well. So essentially, like you always remind us, Baba Junius, these people don't believe in fair competition. They
Right.
believe in monopoly, as you always remind us.
Right. Well, the agenda is for not just monopoly, but singular ownership, which is a form of monopoly. But so already you have 6 conglomerates controlling almost all the media that exists. So now it's going to be consolidated even more. And you're going to see more and more consolidation to the point that it's all going to be just like the goal of the one world government is all going to be under the control of one group and their acolytes and their lapdogs and their flunkies.
Mm-hmm. And I just confirmed in the background, yes, Larry Ellison is of Jewish heritage. He was born to a Jewish mother, Florence Ellison, and his father was a Jewish immigrant from Russia. However, Ellison was raised by his adoptive parents who were not Jewish, but Ellison is Jewish. That would make his son David Ellison Jewish, therefore furthering the conspiracy theory, quote unquote, that the media is being wholly, completely taken over and controlled by people sympathetic with the state of Israel.
That was always Sarnoff was Jewish. The people who started Sarnoff, they were NBC. The people who started CBS in the beginning were Jewish. Hollywood is Jewish,
right?
And with connection with organized crime, which, by the way, a large segment of it was Jewish. Meyer Lansky and some of those other guys, they just promote the Sicilians or the mafia to get the scrutiny off of them. But basically, they were neck deep in it.
And then I would also add that we also have the technocracy or technocratic transhumanistic biodigital element.
Yeah.
Because Larry Ellison is I believe he's the second wealthiest man in the whole entire world, by the way.
I think you're right now. Mm-hmm.
He was the top, and then I think Elon Musk has now advanced above him. But
nah, see, that's part of the discourse, the narrative. You can't. If you're not talking about the Rothschilds, you're not talking about the richest people in the world.
Well, your second reportedly rich man in the world. I do agree with you, Baba Junius. You cannot ignore the wealth of these entrenched families, generation after generation, while at the same time, many times we just have the reports that we're accessing to go on.
Well, the other thing is you have to, when you delve deep you understand that the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Kellogg's, a lot of them got their support through finance of the Rockefeller affiliated banks and investment companies, the Warburgs, the whole piece. Yes, there were WASP investment houses on Wall Street, but they were dwarfed by the influence of the Rothschild.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm reminded of a book. I have this book in my library, even though I really haven't read it. It's called An Empire of Their Own:
Of
How
their
the
own,
Jews Invented Hollywood, written
yeah,
by Neil Gabler, who is himself an insider to the Jewish faith. And that was published in 1989. Personally, I think it's a very significant book, and people should read it. Did you get a chance to look at the book, Baba Junis?
yeah, and it it talks about the business of Hollywood and who was who. So Warner Brothers, when you look at who they were, the brothers were Ashkenazim.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the other studios, a lot of them were headed by MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, Ashkenazim, and on and on and on. Now, what we're talking about now, consolidation happened back then. There were a lot of smaller film companies, Oscar Michaud and there were other black film companies, but they couldn't keep up with the technology. Once the technology morphed into sound, and they didn't have the distribution network. When you look at the distribution network, and you study Hollywood recognized they had to have places where they could exhibit their films. So all the studios had theaters, right? Every city in the country has a Paramount Theater or a Fox Theater. Back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
it was RKO and some of those. Then the federal government came in and busted it up because they said it was a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
That was, and the studio system, not only when you look back prior to what Jim Gardner did to break away from the studio system was very much like professional sports. You were owned or usually under exclusive contract of a studio.
Mm.
So you were owned by Warner Brothers or you were owned by Paramount. And they determined who went up, who went down, who was A grade, who was B grade, all of that. And you also had, again, the business element, and a lot of that stuff where the organized crime comes in. It was financed in addition to the Wall Street investors, many of them who were Ashkenazim, but it was also financed by organized crime. That's
Mm-hmm. Few more comments show up. Queen Mother Kashiba says black comedy shows are anti-intellectual and foster ignorance, to which Ed writes, just as fast food and junk food feeds the medical industry. Rory, responding as well, says to Queen Mother Kashiba, I got talked into going to a so-called comedy show recently. 2 full hours of the most low-down, self-hating, anti-black racism that would have made Charlie Kirk proud. That's a very interesting statement. There's one more comment I'll read real quick. For Africa One, writing from UK, says, thank you, Dwara, for the blackface and transgender analogy. Very powerful, clear, and simple to explain to anyone who has the mind understand. And I do agree. That was a good analogy you brought up there, brother Dwara.
Thank you, Baba. And thank you to For Africa One over in United Kemet.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, there's a series going on HBO and I'm trying to look it up now what the name of it is. Seen and Heard, the history of black television. I encourage people to look at that. And based on the information that you're hearing here, an Empire of Their Own, understanding how the business works, look at that and listen to black folks talking about Hollywood, making it in Hollywood, the Hollywood system. The only thing they do it from the perspective of the networks getting green lighted. Issa Rae, what's the LGBT sister that was is big, and she's hooked up with Chai, and she was hooked up with several other people. She's a director or whatever. Notice in that series, and I think I've seen two. I think there might be three of them. I think two. A lot of LGBTQ people are focused, and spokespersons are being seen in those series, and you see the influence, but it's taken out of. They just talk about Hollywood, but they don't talk about the Jews. Right. But they talk about their struggle, and Queen Kashiba and the brother are talking about the filth and the programming that's coming out of the comedy. But it's the same thing in terms of Hollywood and these stories under the guise of self-determination and creativity.
Were you talking about Wanda Sykes?
Now, I didn't see her on the episodes that I saw. I didn't see Wanda Sykes on there.
Okay, because I know she's another big proponent of the whole LGBT agenda. And then you had this show called Orange is the New Black, which was very popular amongst women. And it was this highly talented Nigerian actress. And I only say that because I saw an interview with her. And it's so funny. In the interview, you would have sworn that this is a conscious sister, that she but the role she's playing in that show it's nothing but a 2000s rendition of Mammy.
But wasn't that series about prison?
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's funny for those of us that know our history. And I feel like we had this conversation on the Falcon Forum back in the day, that of all the stories that could be told about our people, do you remember that? And this is the garbage that we're offering on these lavish plates to our people.
Yeah, but that's what this series is talking about, Seen and Heard. Mm-hmm. That's what. So what they're saying is there's a lot of stories, but we're going to tell these stories.
Right.
And unless you're aware of how the media works, not just in terms of content, but in terms of as a business, you just don't get it. Because these people are quote unquote successful. They're trailblazers.
Right.
And they should be patted on the back because they're doing these type of shows. But you don't see nobody in there they talk about Cosby, but then of course they bring in his foibles.
Right.
But they don't talk about some of the shows that attempted to be, for one of a better word, positive.
Right.
And portray black folks in a different light. I haven't seen any of those people. They talk about Good Times. They talk about Norman Lear and his spin-off shows, but they don't talk about some of those other shows.
Yeah, did they talk about Robert Townsend at all?
No, he wasn't in there. I didn't see him there in either one. But keep in mind, they're talking about television, not movies.
Right. I know he had Parenthood though. That was almost like the kind of the late '90s version of the Cosby Show, in my personal opinion. had a very positive had a very positive aspect, and was had moral principles woven out through in it.
Right,
You know,
right.
I like Robert Townsend. He seems like a brother that has not folded.
No, he was trying to chip away at a lot of things, and it's very difficult when you watch if you watch it from the context of self-determination and liberation. You'll see their struggles, and you'll see how so many of them had to sell out.
Right.
Boy, they actually believe that they're being trailblazers, and to a degree they are, but it's not the type of story that we would feel are redemptive and regenerative and transforming for our psyches.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we do have a couple more comments I want to share. Ed L. Mack writes, sleeper cells have been said to be in the U.S. If this was known, then why would our local city leaders take tax dollars to build walking trails in the backyards of many of our neighborhoods? Most of the trails were said to be for health concerns after COVID, but now if there are sleeper cells, would these trails not be problematic? Um, I'm not really familiar with the idea of trails being built in the back of black neighborhoods. Anybody familiar with that?
Yeah, I have no idea what he's talking about.
The only thing that I can think of is maybe this this increased effort to do what they call hood tourism, and
Okay.
that you know
Well,
back in. Go ahead, Baba.
well, all I know is that there is an effort in some European countries to eliminate certain streets and replace them with bike trails or walking trails, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think that at all connects with what Ed L. Mack was writing about.
I do agree with you that that is part of the smart city, the grid city,
Yeah,
15-minute city. You know, and there that's definitely a huge part of gentrification, as far as I can see.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of bike paths being put in, and not a whole lot of affordable housing going on.
That's very true. We can appreciate the alternatives to having to drive your car, but at the same time, the people need housing. The people need affordable housing. And that's a whole nother subject that we could go into. We could go into this trend that now has reached well over 50% of the single family detached residential homes in the United States are owned by corporations.
Mm. Wow.
So that takes, for the first time single family homeowner, that takes them pretty much out of the competition, especially when you consider the larger economic trends going on. Inflation, a home owner's inflation is outrageous, et cetera, et cetera. The cost of living for the general family. It's going to be harder and harder for our children to become established. Do you remember the pronouncement? I think it was 3 years or so ago that
yeah. I was just about to say that.
it would take the average family how long to catch up with the current status of the average white family insofar as wealth?
No, I was.
228 years or something?
No, I thought you were going to you were referring to the World Economic Forum. You will own nothing and be happy.
You
Right.
will own nothing and be happy. Well, doggone it. We're happy, or at least we claim to be happy. And I'll be honest with you, I don't own much more than these computers and digital gadgets that surround me right now.
Well, I think I'll feel even happier as soon as I bite into a nice big juicy bug burger.
But the good news is that Elon Musk, I mean Gates, is losing money on his Impossible Meat,
Mm.
whatever it's called.
The lab grown meat.
Yeah. No, not the lab grown meat, but yeah, whatever it is, it's synthetic.
Yeah, holy.
It's not even.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I don't even think it's plant based.
Mm-hmm. Might be bug based. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, bug protein based.
Do we have any? Oh, there's one more comment here. Juma, Brother Juba writes, is there anything to there being the recruitment of whites from Ukraine, Australia, and whites from other European countries to support a succession movement in the Western Cape of South Africa? I don't know
Queen Mother
anything about that.
Sheba mentioned this several months ago, but she didn't determine. I thought it was just an indigenous movement, so she didn't say they were bringing any foreigners in to help settle it and build upon it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am not familiar. I'm not saying it couldn't be happening. If it is happening, it just has not crossed my radar and my attention of recent. I am going to look at allafrica.com and see if we can find anything. I can see displacement in Kenya, but that's because of the rising Lake Naivasha, which is rising because of global warming. So now Kenyans are displacing that. I see other stories. Husbands can take surnames of wives. South Africa's top court says that's an interesting story. We do see the opening of the Grand
Yeah,
Merowe Dam
I was going to
in
talk about that.
in Ethiopia, as the Rastas would call it. We could pivot to that story right now if you don't mind, Baba Junis.
Yeah, no, it was inaugurated on September the 9th, and it was a completion of a 14-year project, making it the largest hydroelectric facility on the continent. The good news is that will make available electricity to millions that don't currently have it. The bad news is that there's tension amongst Egypt and Sudan because of its construction. Now, it's the Blue Nile tributary. So, heading north, you have Egypt, but south of that, you have Sudan. So, both of them were concerned from day one once the plans were announced. But it's a great accomplishment. It's a great feat. And hopefully they can resolve their issues, the water issues, and make it a win-win situation for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excuse me. Ethiopia is the largest landlocked country in the world, and that's by design. That's not by accident. And that was done intentionally by colonialistic invaders to cut Ethiopia off as one of the only countries, if not the only country, that have never been successfully colonized. The punishment for that, much like in Haiti or Haiti, the punishment lauded against them for being the first independent black nation in the Western Hemisphere. Ethiopia similarly has been punished for having never been colonized successfully, and so those borders were drawn very strategically to cut Ethiopian people off from access to the Red Sea. So I'm hoping that this dam does bring a renewed sense of life and vitality to the people of Ethiopia.
I
So
say.
the premier of Ethiopia said, and this is in one of the articles, I think I saw this in Al Jazeera. He said this is one of the greatest accomplishments of the black race. And I was interested that he used that term, the black race.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about Ethiopia being strategically cut off from access to water sources, I would say that much of that is due to conquest by these invaders from outside. They couldn't take Ethiopia, but they did take Eritrea, which of
Right.
course they are both of the Habesha people.
Right.
So,
Djibouti.
and then Djibouti and Somaliland and these other countries were successfully colonized for brief periods by European powers. Ultimately, the unification of Africa might be our primary goal in putting it all back together so that Ethiopia and Eritrea can feel as if they are one people with access to the Red Sea and to all other parts.
I agree. I agree. African unionism.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A couple more comments. Juma writes, what is the implication of Africa testing critical mineral backed currency? And I think he's talking about CBDCs backed by minerals as well. Zimbabwe, from my understanding, was the first country to launch a gold backed CBDC. And from my understanding, we haven't heard much about it, but it's been a modest and kind of a slow unfolding of this, but it appears to be pretty seriously organized. A CBDC backed by a nation's critical minerals. Any comment?
I have very little faith in CBDCs.
Hmm.
I think they're part of a much larger, much broader nefarious plan just by the central bank that whole part of it. What when you do a readout and you listen to people who looked into it thoroughly, you're talking about the control grid for Big Brother on steroids. You're
Right.
talking about very much like the Chinese social credit system. And because I was going to talk about that today also, but from a different perspective. But you have to understand what is being planned for the New World Order. And in addition to depopulation, you're going to have constant, and I mean constant, surveillance, data gathering, monitoring, and sharing amongst this techno-feudal system of the overlords to keep the peons under constant surveillance and in compliance. So CBDCs are just one aspect of that whole plan.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, with the advent of Bitcoin around the world, that has reshaped in many ways how the currencies of the future will be operating. And from my understanding, the emergence of central bank digital currencies backed by they were based upon the fiat currency, the value of the fiat currency, but they were also being backed by gold or other strategic resources. My question to you would be, in the aftermath of Bitcoin, what would naturally follow for these nations insofar as their currencies of the future?
Well, that's a great question. What's going to follow is whatever they use to replace these fiat currencies, which are in decline. Their system is in decline, it's unsustainable, and they're scuffling right now to reshuffle and reconfigure all of that. And Bitcoin, or what's blockchain, that is being considered. Of course, you have like the Trump family, they're making millions off of that. So that's why all of a sudden it's in the picture. But again, it's a good question. We won't know until they roll out the replacement for this current system, which is in rapid decline.
Mm-hmm. And
And
Bitcoin is so grossly inflated. I look at Bitcoin right now, it is, as of today, $115,545 per Bitcoin. That is outrageous.
But that's because when you and Bianchi used to have your discussions and debates about it,
Mm-hmm.
I was always reticent to even embrace it. Your one of your arguments was that it wasn't of any value or practical value in terms of trade and commerce.
Yeah, no intrinsic value.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. So what does that mean now?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean now as these rapid developments have occurred, and now you have more and more people embracing blockchain and Bitcoin or whatever you want to call
Well, I would say that what it means now is that though them that got shall get more, them that not shall lose. And that those who few visionaries that did from the middle class and working class did invest in Bitcoin, they got over and now get a chance to participate in the lifestyles of the rich and famous to some extent. But for the overwhelming majority of people that got Bitcoin, they got in so late that they're getting in on a position where it's not necessarily changing to a great degree their relationship with the mainstream. It's a complicated set of affairs. If I could go back, if I had a time capsule and could travel back, would I buy Bitcoin? Hell yes. But I don't have a time machine. And we can only go forward. The growing gap in wealth between them that has and them that has not, and those that are being locked out are at a much greater rate than those being included in. To me, Bitcoin is just another way of the wealthy taking more and more of the poor people's money. And of course, Bitcoin, from my understanding, is a zero sum game.
mm,
it. Right. Well, but see, when you look at that within the context of what's being planned for CBDCs, you look at the other aspect that you talked about, the have-nots. Well, they're going to be the few that are remaining, because remember, depopulation, they're talking about getting rid of billions of people. The people who remain are going to be underwritten with universal basic income or guaranteed basic income. So we still haven't seen how all of this fits into the picture, because the picture again is consolidation, centralization, and control, and it gets back to that dark enlightenment as well as this big brother on steroids.
yeah, I
So
agree.
my thing is, don't view them in isolation. View them as part and parcel of a larger picture. And I suspect that Bitcoin will not play as much as a prominent role in this new world order as people think.
The
Mm-hmm.
the whole locus of control, as they say, is dependent upon the fact that if there is a digital currency, and if I'm correct, that there will be this continued advancement, this continued push to keep people online for longer, permanently connected online. And we could even go into the brain computer interfaces with that. Then if you, in an extreme case with a brain computer interface, if you even think a thought that is contrary to the system, then that digital bank account of yours will be emptied or blocked or deleted.
Yep.
And so this is just dressed up as modernity, as civility. These technologies, as I like to call them, are nothing but these dressed up quote unquote advancements and innovations that are simply used as more advanced ways to control people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You hit it right on the head in terms of the control and compliance mechanism. Everybody will be hooked up. Everybody will have a number. Everybody will have either a card. More than likely, it's going to be a digital implant
Yeah, some sort of a
that you
chip.
can scan and you can use. But if you use it inappropriately, you can be suspended or cut off. Just like if you do anything like you jaywalk. I mean, it's going to be so precise. That's how tight it's going to be.
But all the things that are bad for you will be in plenty. They won't be able to give that stuff away because it'll be in so much abundance. And we can look at the WIC or the SNAP programs the same way as almost a microcosmic example. Um, and
Yeah,
that's
but
why RFK Jr. is trying to make buying certain things with EBT cards and food stamps uh, illegible because you know oftentimes, unfortunately, people are buying substances that are killing them
true.
with those services.
But keep in mind, unless they totally dumb down everyone,
Mm.
what they call the black markets, what I would call the white markets, are going to exist. So they'll have, the only problem is that everything will be so controlled, they'll be so itemized, and they'll be so inventory, making up a word, inventoryized,
Right.
that they will have control over all the items. That's why you see more and more places are making it illegal for you to have your own garden.
Yes. Yeah.
And similar outrageous laws are being passed on a local level like that. It's all in anticipation of this new world order that's approaching a lot faster than we thought.
You are so very right, Baba Junius, because when you look at the newest housing developments, they're usually centered in exactly what we talked about: is a gridded, smart. I won't call it a whole city right now, but these smart neighborhoods where you have the grocery store and you have all your accoutrements around you, but there's no green space. There may be a little park.
Well, they'll give you that. They'll give you that little park, and they'll give you that little dog park, and they'll
Dog
give you
park,
that little
exactly.
what was it called, a skateboard park, where the kids who
Right.
want to be athletic or want to have activities, who are not, as you said, tied to the screens all the time, they'll give them something.
But no gardens. I'm not seeing any.
You're not going to be allowed to have your own garden, no. And definitely not to grow organic fruits and vegetables.
Right.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple more comments I want to share on the in the chat, Rumble chat. Queen Mother Kasiba asks, also, or she makes a statement. Also, there is a new African internet controlled by Africans. I sent the website to you, Kitty, and I did see that, and I looked at it, and I could not confirm that the story was true. I'm looking at it right now, and it looks to me like another example of AI generated fake news from Africa. I'm looking at it right now. I see this picture of a big, well, it's AI generated. It's a big picture of Africa with all of these strands, seemingly digital strands, all centering on a part of Africa, the DRC, that is in the middle of Africa, but is not indicative of any cluster of infrastructure that exists in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. If there were an African internet, it would be based in either South Africa or Egypt. And quite simply, this AI rendering indicates to me that this story is false. It's from a website called Supreme Africa Breaking News. And I did a program just this week on fake news from Africa. Most of the fake news from Africa these days centers around Ibrahim Traore. And this fake news propaganda is building him up to be a messiah figure on the African continent, which he had never claimed to be, and we know that's just not necessary, not true. I suspect it goes into deeply held sentiments from African Americans of wanting to feel pride and wanting to feel connected again. So people are just making up stories that for others to connect to. There are also several websites, and I've identified a couple of them by name, and I can't remember their names right now, and so I'm not going to say them. But in the report, I did identify a huge bulk of this fake news from Africa. Did either of you see that program I did this past week?
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, I didn't. I'll go back and listen to it though.
Yeah, I think that we've we Africans in America are best positioned to battle this fake news and these AI generated fake news from the continent. It's really overwhelming. I can spot them immediately now because they use AI to generate the images, and the images all tend to be somewhat outrageous, etc. But most of our people just are not savvy at determining whether or not the story that they're so eagerly sharing with me and other African responsible news reporters, that we can easily and quickly determine that's not a real story, such as AfriNet satellites take full control of African internet traffic, Silicon Valley shut out. And that headline just doesn't make any sense to me. You guys want to comment on that?
I personally, I think this just goes back to the fact that we've been conditioned to be consumers, passive consumers instead of active producers. Now, that's not to suggest that none of our people are actively producing.
That's right.
It's just to say that the overwhelming majority of us are distracted, are unfocused, and arguably are just consuming. I mean, that's exactly what I think makes social media such a threat, is that I'll put it more succinctly. I do not believe that our creator-given purpose as people of African ancestry was to be born simply to be wasting large amounts of time passively consuming and scrolling on social media. I just we have to know of a deeper purpose than that.
Baba Juniors, did you want to comment as well?
No, I think we pretty much covered this. We pretty much have a good assessment of what this is about.
Yeah, I'm looking at allafrica.com, which we know to be a real news channel. I'm not saying that all of their stories are as good as they could be, but it's a real news channel, and they do not mention anything about the African internet takeover that was just spoken about. So I have a tendency to want to trust African news media to give us the stories we need to know.
Do you think as you wear that wonderful shirt, Baba, do you think that Black Panther, especially the second one, has contributed to this illusion that since our people see all this high advanced African tech in the movie, do you think that gives us this illusion that we're already there? That you know it's okay for it to just stay make believe, and if we maybe close our eyes and think hard enough, maybe Wakanda is real. I'm sorry. Was that too harsh? I don't mean for that to sound hard.
It was harsh, but I can't disagree with any point of that. We Africans in America have been acculturated to not be able to properly distinguish fact from fiction. You don't believe me? What is the majority of our people doing this morning? All across the nation.
Oh man,
We're having
lot.
a hard time distinguishing fact from fiction. I'm somewhat fed up with it, but I'm going to control my reaction because I don't want to chase away the audience that I've been trying to develop. But religion, I will say this much, religion has really done a number on our minds. I'm not going to cuss. It's messed us up. Bad, very badly.
Mm, mm.
And so
Yeah.
now, if let me kind of back up. But if you think the Bible is God's word and it's 100% true from cover to cover, then you will believe anything. I don't believe anything. I don't believe everything. I am as discerning as I possibly can be about all affairs, especially when they come to the best self-interest, long-term self-interest of African people. I'll leave it right there. Baba Junius, you can take it over.
Well, our African ancestors posited that the creator was unknowable,
Right.
that we could get glimpses of its majesty looking at creation, studying nature, studying ourselves.
Mm.
I say that if you have a finite book, it insults infinite intelligence. It insults omniety,
Right.
omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipresence.
Mhm.
Yes, there are truths in it, but they're hidden. You have to discern, particularly in this culture that is aspiritual, anti-intellectual, anti-deep thought. And when you juxtapose that with African deep thought, as Jacob Carruthers presented it, you're absolutely right. It has done a major disservice to us. You know, people don't want to ask the question. Uh, have you ever seen a talking snake? People don't want to ask the question, well, why, if this being gives this group of people, number one, the question is, why would he choose one group of people? And in their mind, it's a he. And if he gives them a set of rules to live by, why would he then turn around and ask them to break those rules in such a ruthless
Yeah.
and bloodthirsty and savage way?
That's a
If you
setup.
doubt what I'm talking, read the book of Joshua, read Deuteronomy, read all of those things, and even in the Old Testament where their notion of God punishes them because they didn't totally annihilate these people he told them to annihilate to take this land. And then ask yourself, what model of that is playing out right before our eyes right now?
That's right.
And what model prior to that? Because like I said, we're going to be studying, people are going to be celebrating Columbus Day. That's the exact same model for that.
That's right.
You know, the Pope blessed them and told them and unleashed them and told them, go subjugate the world. They were not called people of peace. They were conquistadors, the conquerors. That was the mentality that they had. And so we're not using our faculties that we have been given. And because if you look at the African perspective, African cosmology, it's much deeper than Christianity or Islam.
Mm-hmm.
It's more profound than both of them. Now, those are the books and those are the religions that many of us have. So we have to meet our people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we have to educate them, not in a way that turns them off. Because if you start mentioning certain things,
Hmm.
they just go crazy.
Yeah.
Like
They will get violent on you.
yeah, go violent. It's like, yo, why does God need your money?
Right.
What is the real meaning and benefit of tithes?
Right.
It's in there. It's in the book. Read it. It was to support the tribe of the priests because they couldn't have
Mm-hmm.
land, right? But like so much of our people that we've been brainwashed and we don't think because we've been told and intimidated and threatened, accept this, believe this, or comply with this, or else.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
it also makes me think that maybe the reason some of these religions work, using Christianity as an example, is because the Bible is so vast and convoluted that no one can ever kind of fully wrap their head around it, and then it just becomes this thing that you must obey because it's it's not digestible, and so
Mm-hmm.
you cherry pick, and you cite a scripture here or a passage there, and that reinforces your whole entire life, not to mention your identity. I think what frustrates me is that part of our brainwashing has been that nothing came out of Africa, and Africa and Africans have never contributed anything of value to world civilization, which is perhaps the world's greatest lie, because as you, Baba Kiti, and Baba Junius have mentioned, everything from science to metallurgy to chemistry to mathematics to the written and spoken language, uh,
Mm-hmm.
medical science, all of that has origins from the first people who Baba ancestor John Henry Clark taught us were the first to walk and speak, and therefore the first to be conscious African people.
The Bible has, in essence, become an instrument of a mental colonization.
Ashe.
One time, we used to have a Bible study on our job. So in Philadelphia, the family court is right across the street from the library. So some sisters from the library would come over, and one of my coworkers would lead the sessions. So I would go down there from time to time, and a couple of times when he wasn't there, I just brought some things for them to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought a copy of King James Bible. I bought the Catholic Bible. I bought something else. And I just asked them, okay, well, which one of these is the Word of God?
Right.
And as they say, crickets. Nothing. I mean, nobody wanted to say anything. Nobody wanted to think beyond what they've been told. And that's the state we find ourselves in as a people. Whether it's about economics, whether it's about religion, whether it's about the media. And part of it is just we've been discouraged from actually thinking for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I do use the Bible as a reference point, but I use it in a way that enhances people and tries to empower folks, not get caught up in the dogma, the doctrines, and all that sectarian stuff.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple of comments I would like to share before we begin to wrap up today's show. Nguvu writes this: Can someone explain logically why people who know historically they are the same don't, over time, make the necessary corrections to live for each other's benefit? That's a pretty good question. That's a complex question. Anybody want to take that on? I do have my response, but I want to hear yours first.
Well, what we've seen is over millennia, we've seen a concerted attack on Ubuntu.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a break away from collectiveness, social cohesion to individualism. Even though the people who run this country know that one of the laws of the universe is cooperation, they still promote individualism, rugged individualism. And that's really, you cannot accomplish anything without other people. So you can't negate Ubuntu on its various levels, and it's very deep. But that's one of the reasons we've bought into this whole notion that we're separate and distinct from everything else in the universe. Yes, we are unique, but we are connected to everything in the universe.
I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dwara, did you want to respond to that question or that comment?
I'll just quickly say that I'm assuming that the question is being directed specifically towards and about our people. If that's the case, then I would say simply it's been about fragmentation. Is that there are so many identities that one can choose from today, and that one can prioritize, whether it be racial, whether it be religious, whether it be gender. All of these things in and of themselves contain all these options for identity. And in a traditional culture, you just those options were not there. You didn't rebel from your parents. You wanted to be like your parents. Your parents were your book of knowledge, and your grandparents were your book of wisdom, and your ancestors were your book of understanding. And so the everything was kind of metered out to you in such a way that you didn't have to keep trying to reinvent the wheel. Remember, we are a backwards looking people, and that's maybe why they thought of us as being backwards. But in reality, I'm seeing backwards as being a positive thing, and this insistent notion that I am God, and therefore I have to create and innovate and modernize. That is the European mentality, and that's part of the problem. So long story short, I would say fragmentation is that we're in today's European dominated or Eurasian dominated society. There are just too many options, and that's part of divide and conquer, I would argue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, you brothers have touched on some very serious points. I almost forgot what the question I asked you was. But yeah, I'll just skip over a couple more comments, and then we're going to begin to wrap up the show. Queen Mother Kashiba writes in the chat, Dr. Erakana is sponsoring a tour to Burkina Faso next month. There are 1,000 African Americans going, and a few will gain citizenship. This is a true story. It's her organization. I did see that story, and it is ADDI's plan on making the trip. I don't know that Burkina Faso is offering citizenships to Africans from the diaspora. I do know that Ghana still has its open policy welcoming Africans back. And so based upon that, I would definitely say, yes, that's true about Ghana. And I believe it to be true that a number of people, I don't know how many people, are going to be traveling to Burkina Faso with Dr. Erakana Chiamburu. She is undeniably one of our sheroes from the continent. I love Dr. Erakana. I've never met her in person, but we've had several conversations on the Carl Nelson show where we've been on together, along with Professor PLO Lumumba, though I give she and he credit for being the best example of Marcus Garvey's voice as it lives in this generation.
Say.
So, on that note, one more comment. Brother Osail Kamal writes, how do we find out what's facts coming from the continent about Burkina Faso? To which I responded, I put up the link to the program I did this past week, Fake News Propaganda over Burkina Faso and Ibrahim Traore. And during the hour and a half long program, I described my process for verifying or unverifying these stories. And it's at a certain point, it becomes kind of obvious. You can just look at the artwork. And if you hear the synthetic AI generated voice, and it doesn't even sound like an African person, that's quite likely that the story is from outside the content or outside the continent, and it's not true. There were a couple of other hints as well. He said some is obvious, but some of our people don't know what content is true or not coming from Africa. Brother Shabaka writes, the Bible is the only book that allows you to have your own opinions after you've read it. Interesting. And ADDI, African Diaspora Development Institute, Dr. Eric Connor's organization, please do, everybody, check it out. All Burkina Faso news is not fake. We just have to verify it from trusted sources first. I do agree, Keedy, that some of it is AI generated. I can spot AI generated fake news now pretty much as soon as I look at it. Right now, I pulled up a website, the site talking about the African internet, and I pulled up the video, and then I just click on take you to the site, and I can assure you all of these videos are AI generated fake news, such as don't touch China or else, quote unquote, China warns USA. That's not true. That is not true story. Unless somebody knows something. Did China tell United States, do not touch Africa or else?
Not to
Another headline I'll read, breaking, one African government orders all 55 armies to merge into one. NATO on edge. That's a completely false clickbait headline. I'll mention one more. It's so obvious to me. U.S. and Europe move to ban AfricaNet devices, saying it's dangerous. And that is, of course, the AfricaNet, said to be the new African-controlled internet. And it's just not true. So I'm looking at all these stories. I'm looking at all the AI-generated artwork for the front covers. And quite simply, Queen Mother Kashiba, with all due respect, I don't need this crap in circulating in the back of my head. I have to have filters to control and keep this stuff out of my head. To me, it's porno.
Information porn.
Information porno. Thank you. Thank you. Let's begin to wrap up. We got 2 minutes before we're over our time, but we have time to wrap up. Brother Duara, do you have any stories that you wanted to report on today that we did not yet get to?
Yeah, I was Japan's prime minister resigned amid backlash over plans to import African migrants. And at first, in that article, it was interesting because they were talking about the backlash and all that, and clearly, that's probably based on racism. But the interesting thing is that the reason why he was specifically wanting to import Nigerians and I can't remember the other country that the migrants were going to come from was because he was trying to solve the population crisis. And as we know, in Europe, In order to be considered a developed nation, you have to have a certain birth rate in order to keep you amongst that statistic, so to speak. And so I thought it was very interesting that not only are our material resources being sought, but our human resources are being sought again, and this time for procreative measures, as was the plan to import a lot of Africans to Japan in 3 different provinces with the hope that they would create a lot of children.
Yeah. Now, I see the story where the Japanese prime minister did resign on September 7th, but
Mhm.
I don't see, I'm missing the connection to Africans in the story.
Sure. So this
I'm
article,
trying to find it on the page, but unfortunately my computer's locking up.
no problem. This was on Slay News, dated September 8th. And basically, Ishiba made the announcement Sunday revealing that he's stepping down due to internal party pressure and public uproar over his government's controversial African hometown program. And then he talks about Mozambique, Nigeria, Ghana, and Tanzania were being slated to offer a special visa for to have Africans come under the special visa that it was supposedly seen by Japanese people as being kind of duplicitous. And yeah, I know we're short on time, so I won't say any further than that. But that's from Slay News, dated September
Okay.
8th.
Okay. Slay News. People can go there and find that story. Um, any other stories on your table, on your agenda, Brother Dwar?
The only other one that I'll mention, and I'll save the others for next time, is that there is a report that came out. This is from the Journal of American Physicians and Surgeons. It's a medical paper titled "COVID-19 Injections: Harm and Damages: A Non-Exhaustive Conclusion." I'll just quickly read the abstract, which is just about a paragraph or two long. Compelling
Mm-hmm.
compelling evidence shows that SARS-CoV-2 and SARS-CoV-2 modified mRNA biologics/vaccines are products of gain of function research with genomic features that vaccine outcomes that suggest deliberate engineering rather than natural evolution. Far from benign, these vaccines have unleashed profound harm, disturbing nearly every system of the human body and contributing to unprecedented levels of morbidity and mortality. From autoimmune disease and cardiovascular catastrophes to pregnancy complications and aggressive cancers, the patterns of systemic toxicity cannot be dismissed as coincidental. Urgent scrutiny and accountability are needed. And this, again, is a medical paper with what appears to be over a dozen doctors having authored this paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that with our audience. Baba
Yeah, just to
Juniors.
dovetail on what Dwar was saying,
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic, postmortems and autopsies were discouraged. But now more and more are being done, and they're finding out exactly what Dwar said, that the shots have caused more deaths and more organ damage than previously thought, and far more than the so-called COVID itself. But I just wanted to talk about a friend of mine in Agegna, Dr. Earl S. Richardson. He was the 9th president of Morgan State University from 1984 to 2010, made his transition. He was a key person in the 2006 lawsuit that was filed by the Coalition of Equity and Excellence in Maryland Higher Education, they were able to secure $577 million for Maryland's 4 HBCUs, Coppin, Maryland Eastern Shore, Morgan State, and Bowie. And he was one of our advisors and supporters when we did the same thing for Cheney. So he was 81 years old. He's going to be sorely missed. And next week or so, I'll talk about energy costs that are going to rise and why they're going to rise. It has a lot to do with these data centers that are being constructed that are drawing energy that we're going to pay for our own enslavement. But I'll talk about that later.
All right. Well, today was a good day here on LIB Radio. As Ice Cube would say, I didn't even have to use my AK. We got spared the coming Civil War. We got spared by another week, even though from the Charlie Kirk story, we can see we're maybe 1 or 2 steps closer to midnight in America. Oh boy, this could be very interesting. Thank you both for your fantastic contribution to today's show. I want to thank all of those in the chat board. Just real quickly, Queen Mother Kashiba, I was on a Zoom call with Dr. Ericana. She stated that it is true. I sent that story about Japan to you 2 weeks ago. Hey, don't forget to hit the like button, says Brother Nguvu. And he said, you are late, Mr. D, on this story. Is it fake? Question mark. Can you prove that it is true, Mr. D? I don't understand. I was insulted by your remarks, Mr. Dwara. I don't know what she's talking about.
Maybe questioning the article that I brought up from Slay News about
about the COVID.
No, about the Japanese migrant.
Oh, the migrant. Yeah. Well,
but I certainly didn't mean to offend anybody.
Well, she didn't mean to. I don't think she was really that insulted. But if she is insulted, I did say that I could not confirm it based upon what I was looking for, that I used to confirm things like that. At least mention it in the story. Here's one thing. I'll say this much. If we're looking for truth about Africa, do not go to YouTube. Go to Al Jazeera first. Al Jazeera is, of course, out of Doha. Is it Doha? Dohan? I can't remember the name. But Al Jazeera has a tendency to be neutral about such stories. Not too far left, not too far right. But Al Jazeera is in opposition to U.S. media. So that's one of the first places I'll go to confirm it. I can use other stories, even though BBC's News on Africa is a little better than America, but BBC is, of course, a colonizing propaganda outlet, so that's not a reliable source. But YouTube is the worst. I almost cussed. YouTube is the worst to go to. And just do this. If you're going to use YouTube, click on the channel link, click on the channel. Most time it's the header or whatever, and just look through their stories. Read the headlines. And if the headlines sound crazy, then you likely have tapped into a AI-generated fake news site about Africa. And so thank you all for tuning in today. You guys, I hope you agree that we did a good job on LIB Radio today.
Yeah, I do agree. Ashe, I just confirmed that article. By the way, there's a Breitbart one that I just posted in the private chat as well. So that story, if that's the one that was being referred to, is true.
And again, what's the point of contention again?
It seemed like that one of the stories was being called into question.
Okay, well, we'll check that out. And to our LIB Radio family, thank you for tuning in today to LIB Radio. We encourage you to keep up your support of LIB Radio, we did have not a bad bit of success during our emergency August fund drive. And that bought us a little bit of time. It bought us over a month's worth of time. And so keep it up. You did wonderful. For those of you who thought about giving to LIB Radio but suppressed that desire for whatever reason, do think about it again. I encourage you to engage in such activity. Thank you, Brother Dwara. Thank you, Baba Junius, for all you do for all of us. We are so wonderfully, incredibly grateful. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you on your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are living in black.com. Peace, y'all.